Sometimes I feel like I'm just a broken record up here. I get up here and I say week after week after week, man, classes is the thing. You know, and sometimes, but the thing about it is what happens for me each week is I experience life in this whole new way, no matter what the circumstance is that's coming at me, because of this teaching. Because I keep learning through this, I keep growing. Ash was just telling me yesterday how she can't even recognize me when she's been out of town all week. And she was remembering back to the first time she went out of town, where I accused her almost every day we talked of being with another guy. And she was saying to me, well, you don't do that anymore. And she was just saying how different I was. And I can feel it in myself. And then we were talking about 2 years ago when I was in the hospital and was told this was going to be the last day of my life. And how that changed me. I mean, it would anybody, right? But the thing that came up for me most about that was how calm I was and how accepting I was and how okay it was. They call luck the meeting of preparation and opportunity, right? You've all heard that, I'm sure. Well, that's what this teaching is we prepare ourselves in a way that allows us to feel more joy and acceptance, whatever is going on, whatever comes, whatever happens in life, we can be in an entirely different way about it than we've been in the past. And thus, that actually impacts what then shows up. I am noticing more and more how much I am enjoying the side effects of this as opposed to what exactly, and so what I'm doing is not focusing on results. Not focusing on results, but instead how I'm being, who I'm showing up as. And so one of the things I noticed this week is just how much I adore my wife. I love that woman so much, which doesn't mean she doesn't drive me crazy sometimes, right? But it doesn't matter. What I notice is none of that is all the things that go on matter so little because of how open-hearted I am to who she is and how I let that in. And what was funny for me when I was thinking about that was I was enjoying so much how much more I love. That I am able to love more than I ever had before. I mean, this is my 4th marriage. I've had lots of practice, right? And so I can look back and see, you know what? I was not open-hearted before, not like this. And where did I learn this? I learned it through class. I learned it through going through all these classes and getting into practitioner studies and then going on to ministerial studies. And now the studies I'm doing now. I mean, it's not like it stops. Just this morning I was reading, and I like reading these Zen ancient texts in the morning, which make zero sense in today's world, really. And yet hold inside them these deeper truths that play no matter what era it is, no matter where we are. Ram Dass used to say all the time, if there are great times or there are terrible times, your work is the same. And I noticed that more and more, where I used to be the guy who, if it was great times, would kind of let up on my practice. Oh, I'm in great times now, so I don't need to practice so much. I used to be that guy. And now, so, like Barbara Waterhouse used to say to me, she says, how often does life work out for you? And I said, sometimes. And she said, how often do you practice? And I said, sometimes. And so it really does shift. And so I have this relationship to love now that is literally just a side effect. It's not like I've been focusing on opening my heart. It's true, I haven't been. That's not the focus of my practice. That's a side effect of the practice of awakening consciousness. That's why we hold that here as our purpose. Awakening consciousness through spiritual community is because the side effects of doing that are extraordinary in our relationships with each other and our relationship mostly with ourselves, right? How I feel about myself. And so I got to see how extraordinary my wife is, and I continue to do that. It wasn't like, this was the first time I felt that about her. I've been feeling that about her for 11, 12 years. But the difference is that it's more palpable now in a way that I never allowed myself to feel. And so I get to see her brilliance and greatness more. Get to enjoy, and the fact that I'm seeing that is really impacting me. Like I'm getting a tremendous amount of joy in myself for being the guy who's open-hearted and can see her that way. Do you see what I'm saying here? She is a brilliant woman, but where I'm really getting my joy from is who I'm being, that kind of openness that I can see it. You want to be that person who can see it when it's right before your eyes. I noticed, this week, I was in a meeting this week, and I was telling Ash after the meeting that it was the most appreciated I ever felt by the leadership of this community. And then I thought about that, and I thought, I'm sure that they've changed, but what really changed is I finally let it in. I changed, right? It isn't like they haven't been appreciating me, but there was something that I'm still changing, and I'm still shifting, that I was able to let it in on this whole new level where afterwards I'm going, wow, I really felt that. And that makes a difference when you open to a level at which you can really let it in. And life shifts from that. It has for me. It continues to. It's why I get up here and say, please get into class. It really makes a difference in your life, in how you experience the day-to-day, and how you experience all the circumstances that go on, because life can hurt. Life can feel hard. This is just part of it, right? I was thinking that just this morning about how, I was thinking about this scene from The Right Stuff. I don't know if you know that movie, but there's this, it's a movie about the first people who went into space in the US. And so there was this one pilot who was like considered the best of all the pilots, who didn't want to become an astronaut because he just loved flying around in his, he was a test pilot. He got to fly the latest and greatest and break records of sound barriers and all that kind of stuff. And there's this scene in there where all the rest of the test pilots are laughing at the astronauts because the first one to go into space was a monkey. And they were comparing the astronauts to monkeys. And this top pilot says, the monkeys don't know they're sitting on top of a rocket that could explode at any moment. The courage it takes to do that. And I was thinking, that's us. We know we're going to die. My dog doesn't. Right? And so when people say he has the Buddha consciousness, I'm thinking he doesn't have to go through what we do in knowing that life is hard, in knowing that there's all these things going on in the world that just feel, you want to feel compassion for the suffering of people. We feel that. And in that, our ability, our willingness to grow to a place of kindness and compassion means more, because we know, we're aware. People talk about the innocence of children, and we don't have that once you're an adult. getting back to the innocence of children. We have experienced life. We've gone through some of the hardships. And then when we get to a place of compassion, that's something. When we reach our childlike nature inside what we know is going on in the world, that's something. And so I noticed this week how I've been just looking at things even more differently than a few weeks ago, that it just continues to just evolve and open up, and I don't see any end to this. So I'm out with Enid, and we're smelling the blossoms, and there was something so crystal about the sky and the beauty and the smells, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm really in this. This feels so cool. And it's different from the first time somebody said to me, you want to slow down to smell the roses. Right? I'm sure you've heard that, right? This was different because I was so present with it. And then I'm present when I'm doing my work, and I'm present when I'm making phone calls. And when I was in that meeting, there's a presence that took me a lot of practice to get to. A lot of support and accountability from others in my classes for me to get to a place. I do this work because I know that all of you will hold me accountable for my practice. So I get to be accountable. For those of you who aren't up here, classes will work. And so that's the beauty of this, is how we take it in, and then how we move forward with it and how we grow with it. So Ash is in England, London at the moment. I'm joining her tomorrow. And the reason we set up this trip was because of a cousin of mine who is more like a sibling. My wife and I are very rich, but we don't have a lot of money, right? And so paying for this trip took a lot of work for us. And the reason we did it was for my cousin, because we're that close and we've been there with each other. We have been doing Thanksgiving together since I was born. I mean, we've been in each other's lives. We've stepped up for each other when we needed to. And so when she said she wanted to throw a 70th birthday party for her husband in London, I said, I'm there. And so Ash and I worked it out, and we're going. And then on Wednesday, she had a massive stroke. And I have been spending a lot of time crying about that, feeling the depth of my pain around that, and feeling the exquisite nature of it. There was a time where if this had happened, I would have been devastated and destroyed by it. Instead, what I'm noticing is how I've been spending my week is just being in these feelings, really allowing the depth of it to be in me. And so in that, feeling the joy in the pain. I don't know if I can explain this in a way that makes any sense, because it doesn't make any sense to me. But there's a way in which there's been a celebratory piece to this, of just going through all the different wonderful things we did with each other through the years, how we stepped up for each other, how we were there for each other, what it meant to each other to have been there in the ways that we were, and really enjoyed it in this same presence. So that instead of it being devastating, instead of it sending me down a rabbit hole, I feel lifted by it. In the pain. And that is extraordinary. And that is a side effect I didn't see coming. It's not like I sat around going, I want to feel great when bad things happen. And it's not that I do feel great, but there is a greatness in it. When I was in the hospital and they said, this is your last day on earth, I wound up coming out of that experience thinking that was awesome. And and you can imagine all the different things you go through when somebody says, this is it, this is your last day, right? And so there's something that is carried forward in that I'm sitting with now. Now, I'm not standing up here going, this is awesome. But I am going that this is part of life. And I don't want to miss a bit of it. So I'm not cutting myself off from any of it. I'm in it fully and appreciating the fact that I am alive in this to be a part of this. And so one of the things that Ash and I have been looking at, because my cousin lives in Switzerland, part of the time and part of the time in Long Island. But at the moment, she's in Switzerland when this happened. Party was supposed to be in London. And so we're looking at, well, we got to get ourselves to Switzerland from London. And we already pretty much shot our wad money-wise. And so I called Ash and I said, why don't you see about our reservation at the hotel, see if we can get out of a few days and get refunded on that. And she said, I just got the email saying there's no more refunds and you're booked through Sunday. Right? I said, well, give them a call, see if we can get out on Friday. And so she goes online and checks the reservation, and online it says checkout's on Friday. So she calls him up. and the lady on the other end goes, I have no idea how this happened. None. No idea. And we're sorry, we're booked. And Ash goes, great. Perfect. It was a really expensive hotel. This was enough we saved enough to fly us to Switzerland. Ash didn't know it. Now, my cousin, she's got money. She's got a lot of money. And so she throws these parties, and they're always very formal. Like, she wanted me there in a tux. I told her, no. But she said a bow tie, so I got a bow tie. In fact, I've decided to wear the bow tie into the hospital when I go see her. I think she'll get a kick out of that. Anyway, Ash has been putting off getting the party dress and didn't know why, and now we know why. So there's been like these signs all along supporting us in this that we weren't thinking about. But this is what life can do, because miracles are happening around us every single day, and we can miss them so easily when we're focused on this instead of all of it. Because life includes all of it, not just a piece of it, right? So we go into this with the idea, we go into this teaching to grow ourselves, to continually grow ourselves so that we can see what's happening differently. And as soon as we do that, that means we've embodied what is happening differently, which means what happens differently actually shows up differently. And so I didn't die in the hospital. And I never once was praying for health. I was just praying for my highest and best, to be present with all of it. And thus, somehow, in some miraculous way, the reservation changed that nobody can figure out. And so we have our way to get to Switzerland. This is what life can do when you start seeing it differently. When you embody it differently, it shows up differently. And so I get to feel more love. You get to feel more love. You get to feel more joy. We teach practices that create joy-filled lives. There's a reason for that, because it is the most powerful act we can do. Because then we can be more present in other people's lives and bring that joy to their lives, who then bring joy to other people's lives. And in this way, we are a part of changing the world. This is how it works. So hard things happen. Who are we being in that? How are we seeing that? How are we showing up? It makes all the difference in the outcome. I don't believe we have control over circumstances, but I do believe we have impact on outcomes based on how we show up. I see it time and time and time again. You know, this is what's possible. So in the midst of this, I'm going to show up in a bow tie, and I know she's going to laugh about it, even if it's internally, however she can. You know, we will show up for people in ways that are healing for them and healing for ourselves. Because it always is both. There is no such thing as a one-sided coin. Everything is happening in both. So the more we show up in healing, the more others are healed. We feel it, and then they feel it, even if they can't express it at the time. That's how it works. I was thinking about gravity today, and how gravity is important because it keeps us from floating off the planet. On the other hand, it forces us to gain the muscle strength to stand, or otherwise we'd be lying down all the time. And so it's these opposing forces that actually are working together to make life fantastic, right? It's not like there may be one, but there's always seems to be two sides to the coin, these opposing forces working together to somehow build a life that is extraordinary. That's what's possible. And so I invite you to open to this greater sense of self, this greater sense of life, this greater sense of possibility for all of us. Thank you. I love you.